The city of Velora buzzed with alien energy, its neon lights reflecting off the polished stone streets where merchants shouted and buyers bargained. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy, but one man sat silently at a gambling table surrounded by blue-skinned aliens who didn't hide their stares. His name was Kale, a former soldier-turned-wanderer, and he was about to gamble without knowing the price. Kale didn't like gambling. He preferred control, planning, tactics. But when the merchant invited him with a smirk and a stack of glittering credits, Kale thought it was just another casual game. The aliens laughed and cheered as Kale kept winning hand after hand. He didn't realize the game was being watched by more than just the crowd. Across from him sat Vernick, a powerful alien merchant dressed in embroidered robes. He was calm at first, then frustrated, and finally furious. His last card was weak. His pile of chips was gone. And in one desperate moment, he whispered something to the dealer and pointed at the girl beside him. The girl was quiet, sitting with her hands folded. She wore silver chains and a jeweled headpiece. Her blue skin shimmered under the lights. She didn't look up until the last card was thrown, and her father's head dropped in defeat. The crowd fell silent, then erupted into gasps and muttering. The dealer turned to Kale and announced the prize, and that's when Kale realized what had just happened. "You have won the merchant's daughter," the dealer said. "By Velora law, you must accept her. The rules are rules." Kale stood, confused and angry, his voice firm as he refused. "I didn't bet for a person," he said. But the crowd backed away, and guards stepped forward, nodding with blank expressions. The alien girl looked down again. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She just whispered, "It's done." Kale tried to protest. He looked for a way out, for someone in charge. But this planet's laws were written in old texts and the people followed them with religious fear. Declining would insult the merchants. Honor, break the gambling code, and cause Kale to be seen as a criminal. The girl, barely older than 20, was already being taken toward him. Her name was Sierra. She didn't speak much, but she walked with grace. Her chains weren't tight, but they were enough to remind everyone that she wasn't free. Kale hated the weight of what had happened. He wasn't a slaver, wasn't a buyer, and yet everyone now looked at him like one. He took her by the wrist, gently, and they left the hall under 1,000 staring eyes. At the edge of the city, Kale's small ship waited. Sierra stepped inside without complaint, her eyes scanning every surface as if searching for danger. Kale sat across from her in the tiny cabin. "You're not staying chained," he said. He unlocked her cuffs and offered her food, which she refused politely. "Why did your father bet you?" he asked. She answered without emotion. "He thought you would lose," she said. "I was not worth much to him anymore. He needed money. For debts, I am quiet, obedient, and not strong. I was an easy stake." Kale didn't reply. He just stared at her, wondering what kind of place treated daughters like chips on a table. She looked away and folded her hands again. "You don't have to keep me," she added. Kale leaned back and rubbed his face. He hadn't planned to take anyone, let alone a girl with eyes full of sadness and strength hidden beneath it. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do with you," he admitted. "I just wanted to rest a few days, not take someone's life into my hands." She looked at him then, her voice soft but firm. "Then give me freedom." He stood, walked to a locker, and pulled out an old travel document. It was blank, able to be filled with any identity. He placed it in her hands and said, "This will make you legally free in most zones. Once we leave this system, you can choose where to go." She stared at it for a long time, then finally said something that made him pause. "I will stay for now. Not as your prize. Just until I decide where I belong," she said. Kale nodded slowly, unsure why her words brought relief. Outside, engines hummed, the city faded, and stars stretched across the dark screen. The game had ended, but something unexpected had begun. The stars outside the ship moved slowly, glowing like cold fire across the dark sky. Inside the small cabin, Kale checked the systems, barely speaking a word. Sira sat across from him again, quiet but alert. Her chains were gone, but something heavier still hung in the air between them. She didn't cry, didn't complain. Instead, she helped clean the small kitchen unit and organize the supplies without being asked. Kale watched her closely. He still couldn't understand why she hadn't taken the freedom document and run. "You're free now," he reminded her. "You don't owe me anything." She didn't even pause while sorting the food packs. "I know," she said, "but I'm not safe yet. Not until we're out of this sector." Kale nodded, understanding. This part of space was lawless in many ways. A girl traveling alone would be hunted by traffickers or slavers. As long as she was with him, people would assume she was protected or owned. He didn't like either word. The ship dropped out of light jump near a refueling station built into an asteroid ring. It was old and rusted, run by private guards who only cared about credits. Kale needed fuel and fresh water, and Sira needed a few essentials of her own. Before stepping out, Kale gave her a hooded cloak. "Stay close," he said. "Keep your head down." She nodded once. As they walked through the metal corridors, aliens of all shapes stared. Some whispered, some laughed. One reached out toward Sira, but Kale grabbed his wrist before it touched her. The alien snarled, but backed away when Kale showed the weapon at his belt. Sira's eyes didn't show fear, only silence and focus. She walked like someone used to this kind of danger. They reached the small market area. Sira chose simple things: a comb, a pair of worn boots, a single book in her language. Kale didn't question her choices. He paid, and they returned to the ship quickly. As they closed the hatch behind them, Sira let out a small breath. "I didn't like that place," she said. "Too many eyes. Too many smells." Kale agreed. Later, as the ship moved again, Kale handed her a warm drink and finally asked what had been bothering him since the gambling hall. "Why didn't you fight back?" he asked. "Why just accept it?" Sira looked at the stars outside, her hands wrapped around the cup. "Because if I had fought, I would have been beaten. Or killed, or sold to someone worse." Her voice didn't shake. She spoke as if describing someone else's pain. Kale clenched his jaw. "That's not how things should work," he said. "You're not something to be traded." Sira looked at him for a long time, her expression unreadable. "Maybe not," she said, "but this is the galaxy we live in. And I've survived because I've learned when to stay quiet." They fell into silence. But this time, it wasn't awkward. It was shared. Sira sat on the floor, reading her book. Kale ran checks on the engines. At some point, she asked about his past. "You were a soldier," she said. "I saw the patch on your old coat." He didn't deny it. "I was," he answered. 15 years. Then I walked away." "Why?" she asked. Kale paused before speaking. "Because I saw too many leaders treat lives like pieces on a board. Orders were given without thought. People were lost for no reason. I couldn't do it anymore." Sira nodded slowly. "So you left war behind, and now you save strangers like me." He looked at her. "I didn't save you. I just didn't abandon you." That night, she made a small meal from the supplies and insisted Kale eat first. "It's your ship," she said. "Your rules." But Kale handed her the first bowl. "You're not a guest," he replied. "And I don't have rules for kindness." She smiled for the first time, a soft and brief thing that faded quickly. But it left a warmth in the room that hadn't been there before. The stars outside remained cold. But inside that small ship, two people who had started as strangers were beginning to understand each other. Not through big words or forced friendship, but through quiet actions and mutual survival. Kale didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for tonight, he knew she was safe. The ship entered a quiet zone of space where trade routes split off toward mining colonies. Kale adjusted the nav settings while Sierra packed away dried supplies from their last stop. They had gone 4 days without speaking much, but the silence had changed. It no longer felt heavy. Each day brought a new task. One morning, Sierra replaced a damaged panel in the water system. Another day, she cleaned the solar stabilizers with careful hands. Kale didn't ask her to. She just noticed the problems and fixed them. That bothered Kale more than he expected. She works like she's afraid of being useless, he thought. He had seen that look before, in rescued children and broken soldiers. The kind who had been used and thrown away. Kale stood near the ship window and tried to ignore the sting in his chest. Sierra entered the control room carrying 2 cups of warm protein tea. "You need rest," she said. "You've been checking the scanners for hours." Kale took the cup but didn't sit. "We're nearing Dro Station. It's dangerous. Gangs run the lower decks. You'll need to stay hidden there." She didn't argue. She just nodded. They landed at the station's outer dock, where crook traders and masked mercenaries watched from every corner. Sierra kept the hood of her cloak low. Kale's hand stayed close to his weapon. The mission was simple: sell a few minerals, buy backup fuel, and leave before nightfall. But simple never meant easy. Inside the trade hall, a merchant recognized Sierra. His eyes widened and a cruel grin spread across his face. "So the bet was real," he hissed. "You really gave her away, old fool." He grabbed her arm, but before he could finish the sentence, Kale's fist slammed into his face. The man fell bleeding while guards turned to look. Kale glared at them. "She's under my protection," he said. "She's no longer property." One of the guards shrugged and turned away. Another laughed. "Nobody cares here. Just don't cause blood on the merchant floor." Kale helped Sierra stand and led her quickly back toward the ship. Inside the ship, Kale was breathing hard. Not from the fight, but from the anger rising in his chest. "You weren't even surprised," he said. "You knew something like that could happen." Sierra looked at him calmly. "Yes," she said. "I was trained not to react. It's safer that way." Kale slammed the control panel. "It shouldn't have to be that way." Sierra touched his arm gently. "But it is. And you did protect me." Her voice softened. "Most wouldn't have." Kale pulled his arm away, not angry at her, but at the world they were in. "I shouldn't have had to," he replied. "You shouldn't have been part of a bet." Later that evening, she placed a folded cloth beside his bed. Inside it was a small badge, not hers, his. "I fixed it," she said. "Your old captain badge. It was cracked." Kale stared at the symbol. It hadn't meant anything to him in years. But seeing it whole again stirred something in his chest. "Why would you do this?" he asked. "You owe me nothing." Sierra looked at him with clear eyes. "You didn't throw me away like my own people did. That's worth something." She turned to leave the room, but Kale stopped her. "Stay, sit. You don't need to be alone all the time." She hesitated, then sat at the edge of the bed. They didn't speak much more that night. But Kale watched her slowly relax, shoulders less tense, hands resting instead of clenched. For the first time, she looked like someone who belonged somewhere. The next morning, Kale handed her a data pad. "Your record," he said. "I hacked the registry. You're no longer listed as merchant property. You're clean, you're free." Sierra took it with trembling hands. "You erased me?" Kale shook his head. "No, I gave you a new start." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Instead, she smiled. "Then I choose to stay," she said. "Not because of chains, but because I want to." Kale nodded. He didn't trust words much, but hers felt real. Their journey wasn't over. Trouble still waited in the stars. But now, it wasn't just a man and a stranger. On a ship, it was something else. Something closer to a bond that neither expected. Asterisk Kale stood at the ship's control panel, checking the power flow to the engines. The repair module was flickering again, and he didn't want another shutdown mid-flight. Behind him, Sira walked in quietly, carrying a new fuse core she found in storage. She handed it to him without a word. Kale nodded and took the tool. "You always know what I need before I ask," he said. Sira gave a small smile. "That's what I was trained for." Kale paused, then looked up. "Maybe it's time to stop thinking like someone else's property." Sira looked away but nodded. Their next stop was Vega 9, a dusty outpost known for illegal trades and forgotten refugees. It was dangerous, but they needed a stabilizer crystal for the warp drive. Kale planned to enter alone, but Sira insisted on coming. "You might need someone who speaks 3 languages," she said, as they stepped onto the dry metal platforms of Vega 9. Kale noticed something different in Sira's posture. She walked straighter, eyes alert, but not afraid. She no longer clung to walls like a shadow. She had changed, slowly but clearly. Inside the main market, the noise was thick with shouting, bargaining, and lies. Kale found the crystal seller fast, but noticed the man kept looking at Sira. His voice dropped low. "She has the merchant mark. That's worth more than credits here." Kale narrowed his eyes and stepped between them. "She's not for sale," Kale said. The merchant scoffed. "Everything's for sale here. Even loyalty." Sira stepped forward, placing a data chip on the table. "We want the crystal. No questions, no offers." Her tone was cold, controlled, and firm. The merchant, surprised, took the chip and tossed the crystal over. On their way back, Kale didn't speak at first. But then he said, "You didn't flinch, you didn't hide." Sira looked ahead. "Because you didn't look at me like something to trade. You looked at me like I was your partner." Kale gave a quiet nod. Back in the ship, they installed the crystal together. The ship hummed stronger than before. Kale sat in the co-pilot's chair and leaned back. "We're almost done fixing this old bird," he said. Sira glanced over. "Maybe it's not just the ship that's being fixed." That night, Kale found Sira outside the sleeping quarters, holding an old necklace. "It was my mother's," she said. "I thought I'd never wear it again." She handed it to Kale. "Will you help me put it on?" He did, gently, fingers brushing her hair. For a second, they both stood still. "I used to think I'd never belong anywhere," she whispered. "But this ship with you, it feels different." Kale didn't say anything, but his eyes softened. They walked back inside together, the silence warm and unspoken. A sudden alert beeped on the console the next morning. A bounty ping. Kale checked the screen, and his face turned cold. Sira leaned in. "What is it?" Kale showed her. "Your old owner, the merchant. He filed a claim. Says I stole you. There's a reward now." Sira didn't panic. "Then we face it," she said. Kale shook his head. "It's not that simple. He's connected. If he presses the council, they'll send enforcers." Sira placed her hand on his. "Then we don't run. We clear my name properly." With truth, they docked at a neutral port where council disputes were handled. Kale gathered every piece of proof: transaction records, footage of the original bet, and her new registry status. Sira stood before the board and spoke calmly. "I was gambled away. I accepted my fate. But now I choose freedom. And I choose to stay with him." The board reviewed the case. Hours passed. Then the final decision was displayed. Her status remained free. No ownership, no claims, no bounty. Kale exhaled, finally letting go of the breath he'd been holding for days. As they walked back to the ship, Sira smiled. Not the small, careful smile she used to give, but a full, confident one. "I'm not a bet anymore," she said. Kale nodded. You never were. You just forgot. The stars blinked above them as they left the port. Kale sat at the controls, and Sierra beside him. So, he said, where do we go now? Sierra looked out the window. Somewhere we're not running. Somewhere we're building. The engines lit up, and the ship moved forward, not as fugitives, not as strangers, but as something more. The ship cruised through open space, finally free of bounty signals and council alerts. Kale leaned against the railing in the cargo bay, watching Sierra sort through a box of tools and wires. She moved with focus, no longer needing to ask what went where. She had made this ship her own space now. There was no longer any doubt in Kale's mind. She wasn't a burden or an obligation. She wasn't a prize he won or someone he had to tolerate. She had become part of him, part of the rhythm of his life. Her presence felt like something he never knew he was missing until now. A soft alarm beeped on the console. Incoming message. Kale walked over and tapped the screen. The message was from an old outpost, a distress call. Something about missing children taken during a trade raid. Kale looked at Sierra, who had already picked up her satchel. We're going, she said before he asked. When they reached the outpost, the scene was chaos. Families searching, guards shouting, broken crates scattered around. The locals were panicked and angry, and no one had answers. Kale moved quickly, asking questions. Sierra followed, scanning for tracks and strange movement. Her senses trained in survival, caught what others missed. Near the edge of the trade yard, Sierra found a small trail of fur and torn cloth. This way, she said. The path led to a broken ventilation shaft under the main tower. They crawled through narrow tunnels, dusty and tight, and then they heard it. Whimpering. Children. Inside the dark chamber, 5 small alien kids were huddled together. Their captors were gone, scared off by the alarm. Kale knelt beside them. You're safe now, he said. One of the kids, shaking, reached out to Sierra and clung to her tightly. They brought the children back. The parents wept, and the elders offered rewards. Kale refused credits. Sierra spoke firmly. Just make sure no child here is ever traded again. No matter what the rules say. The head elder nodded, visibly shaken. Back on the ship, silence settled for a while. Kale sat across from Sierra at the dining table. Between them sat 2 warm bowls of stew. He tapped his spoon against the edge. You didn't hesitate back there. You took the lead. Sierra looked down, then up again. You taught me to be more than what I was sold for. Kale reached into his coat and pulled out a small metal piece, a pin from the council, granted to those who earned their place through action, not birth. He slid it across the table. You should wear this. You've earned more than any soldier I've known. Sierra stared at the pin for a long time. Then she picked it up and clipped it to her tunic. It sparkled under the ship's warm lights. She smiled gently. Then I'll carry it like I carry your trust. With care. As the days passed, they found themselves laughing more. Cooking together, cleaning the engine, patching up old systems. Not just surviving, but living. Together. No more debts. No more ownership. Only choices and companionship. One night, as stars shimmered beyond the window, Sierra stepped into Kale's quarters holding a wrapped bundle. What's that? He asked. She unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a new navigation panel she built using scraps. For you. A gift, she said. From someone who's no longer a prize, but a partner. Kale stood and placed his hand on her shoulder. You've always been more than that, he said. You just needed the chance to see it yourself. Sierra met his gaze, and for the first time she didn't look away. Her voice was steady. And now I do. Together they stood at the helm of the ship. Sierra tapped coordinates into the console. Where are we headed next? Kale asked. She looked at the stars and smiled. Someplace that needs us. Just like we needed each other. The ship roared to life and pushed forward into the deep stretch of space. Two souls who once belonged to broken deals and old rules, now writing their own path across the stars. They weren't bound by tradition anymore, not by bets, not by chains. They were a family, born not by blood, but by choice.